Morning, everybody. Coach D, episode 2, Creating Champions. So, what I want to talk to you today about is humility and dropping the ego and why it's so important to do so. So, I start with a little story from this past Saturday. I get a call on my cell phone and I'm about ready to go outside with my son. We're going to go to the park. Kid's been inside playing video games all day and he needs to get outside and run around, right? So I promise him, I'm like, listen, kid, we're going to the park now. Phone rings. I pick up the phone and I hear this kid and his voice is cracking and he's nervous. He's asking for Coach DiBernardo. And I'm like, oh boy, it's Saturday. I promised my kid to take him to the park. I don't really have time for this. And he's like, Coach, do you have any roster spots? And he explains his whole story. And I know because I could tell that he's very nervous and he called me out of the blue on my cell phone. There's two ways I could have taken that. One is I could have said, listen, kid, call me back 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekday and I'll try to talk to you. But I wouldn't do that. I could tell that this kid put himself out on the line. His self-esteem is on the line. His self-worth, to a certain extent, is on the line. He's saying, I'm reaching out to a coach. You know, maybe this is the number one team in America, the best college program currently in America, and I'm taking a chance here. And if I rejected him at that point and said, kid, listen, what are you doing? Call me on my cell phone. I don't have time for this on Saturday. I'm taking my kid to the park. I knew that. I knew that that wouldn't be a good thing to do. So I got in a long, in-depth conversation with him about college soccer, about his environment, where he's coming from. What are the choices that he can make? What are the benefits of coming to a program? What are the cons about coming to a program? And we eventually, he knew somebody who was at our school, and he eventually, got a lot from the conversation. I knew a lot about him after that conversation, and we had gone down multiple paths in our discussion, and I felt that he got a lot out of it, and he knew what his next step probably was going to be. And I talked to him with my ear pod in, so I was walking to the park with my kid, and I explained to him, listen, I got to walk to the park when I talk to you because I promised my kid he would play. So at the end of the conversation, I ended up talking to him for 15, 20 minutes, and it was important. It was very, very important. That was one of the most important conversations I had all year because, yes, he's not coming to me. He's not coming to our program, but I gave him the best advice I could, and he was not justified, but by picking up the phone, his risk, his courage that it took to pick up the phone. Again, I could hear his voice cracking. It paid off for him. It paid off for me. And when I say it paid off for me, it's where did I come from? At the end of the day, I came from nothing. I came from in my backyard with a picture book of how to play soccer with techniques. And I practiced for hours and hours and hours a day, year after year after year. I didn't have any role models or anyone to teach me. All I had was a dream back then, and that's the reality. There was no soccer on TV. There was nobody in town who really knew how to play. On Sundays, if we were lucky enough to skip church, I could watch Soccer Made in Germany. That was it. It was the only soccer on TV. It was on PBS. Rudi Völler, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, whatever it was, and that was the only source of information I had. As I got a little bit older, they started to put Italian soccer on. So I was able to record the games on VHS, and I would write down everything in a notebook. Then I would break it down and watch those VHS. And it's funny because as I got older, I had like 40 VHS tapes filled of like 8 hours each of soccer games. And I would watch those games as how I went to sleep. Even to this day, if it's up to me, I'm putting on Peacock and I'm watching English Premier League games. It's how I go to sleep. That's just what I do. So, in this game, you can't have an ego. So I'm in Midtown Manhattan and I'm going to see a talk, and it's with Pele. So there's only like 20 of us in the room. And at the end of the talk, Pele shakes everybody's hand one at a time and says, "It's so nice to meet you, and thank you for coming down to see him." And I'm like, come on, man, this guy is the he's the all-time great probably in soccer. If not, it's debatable. For me, he's the all-time great. And he's thanking us one at a time for coming to see him, right? And for Pele, for him to say the game is about love, I remember that as a very young person, him saying the game is about love, him win or lose, taking time after every game to sign autographs nonstop. He didn't throw a temper tantrum if he lost, go in the locker room, the game's about love. It's about passion, relationships, appreciation, self-worth, self-esteem. So, it reminds me of David Beckham. And a lot of people don't know the stories, David Beckham, Cristiano Ronaldo. There's some great stories that you never hear. But I'm in Harlem. I helped start a U20 team in Harlem. And David Beckham comes for a fundraiser, and he's giving a clinic, and these kids are on a basketball court kind of heckling him from across the way. David didn't want any cops in uniform. Everybody had to be in plain clothes. So David runs outside of the soccer field into the basketball courts, signs the kids basketball, and all the kids start screaming at him, "You're the best, David." But I had a chance to speak to him, and he was just the absolute nicest guy, right? But that's not always what you get. Sometimes in soccer especially, I'm sure this is on all youth sports, you get all these coaches who are like, "I developed these kids. I put these kids in this league. It's the best league in the country, blah, blah, blah." All that stuff with "I" in it, the Buddhists will tell you, "I" is all about ego. Anytime you use the word "I," it's about ego. So that it's not about the kids. It's nothing. It's about you. What did you do? And that's not a good thing to do. Anytime that word "I" is, take that word out. Drop that ego, because it's a complete lack of humility, and that can ruin your organization. It can ruin your culture. I can remember taking my guys a long time ago to play an MLS team, and we got there, and completely unaccommodating, wouldn't let us in like some crappy building. We had to go use the urinal in some outhouse, set up our cones on the field. Kids come out, players, got to pick those cones up. This is your side of the field. No good morning, coach. Hey, I'm sorry about this. We usually warm up on this side. Can you move your stuff? So I'm saying to myself, kid was a little bit rude. And so the coach comes out. Next thing you know, coach is going crazy during the game, yelling at the ref. "If you continue to make these calls, we're never having you back here at blah, blah again," humiliating the referee. And I'm saying to myself, listen, that is your product. That is your identity. The people in your organization, they just blew a golden opportunity with people from the outside to show us humility, to show us compassion, to show us what your organization is really about, and they did the complete opposite. So when I speak about creating champions, it's really not about lifting titles. It's about improving as a person, and that's success. It's about understanding hardship. It's about learning, showing empathy and compassion. And like I said, always dropping the ego. The lack of humility is one of the ugliest things for me to see. And never do I want to be that guy who leads with ego. I think it was Teddy Roosevelt's wife who said, you have to be very, very careful to separate your ego from your job. Your self-worth and who you are is not your job title. It's not. Take away your job, take away everything you do, and that's you. It's not your job. It's very, very important. Now, listen, I'm not great all the time. Like, I remember 2 years ago, player gets pissed off. He thought he should play more. We're losing a tough game. And And I take him off the field, right? I had him in the game. I take him off the field. I want to change things up. He gets pissed. He takes his shirt off. He's on the sideline, no shirt on, completely disrespectful. And I go off. I'm like, and why do I go off on him? Because of my ego. And I should have known better. I should have handled it in a better way. So immediately, we get into it on the sideline. And of course, we back each other into a corner, or I back myself into a corner. And I told him, you're off the team. Boom. Horrible, horrible. For me, that it was just a really poor way to handle that situation. Why? Probably because my ego was bruised. Kid takes his shirt off in front of the whole team, in front of the other. Come on. And I think it bruised my ego. So I like the kid too. So later that night, I give him a call on the phone. We work it out. And at the end of the season ended, and it ended in a respectful way. And him and I are fine. And, it happens. That's my point. It can happen. You could be the most experienced guy, and it can happen. I can remember another one in the national championships. It was a tough game. I think it was a 1-1 game. We finally won in PKs. One of the kids was pissed. He came off the field. I took him out, and he was livid. He was very passionate. And this was all about passion, very passionate. I was trying to explain to him why I took him off. And I was going to put him right back on. And he's an instrumental player. He's one of the best players, period, in the country. And he couldn't listen to me. He was too worked up. So finally, I had to tell him to shut up. I never really tell anyone to shut up. I was like, yo, shut up. And that shut up was so distinct to him. He was kind of shocked. He shut up. And I said, listen, here's what I need you to do. 2-3 words. You ready to go back in? Yes, coach. Boom, go back in. That actually was a way better way to handle it than the kid who, with his shirt off, who we had the big blow up. So, I reflect on these things all the time, and I understand, especially in times of high emotions, you have to navigate these things very, very carefully. But here's where I'm going to leave it with for today with all these stories, is humility, being honest, being accepting, being understanding, being empathetic, and dropping the ego. It's all going to make you a better leader, a better person. It'll create a better culture, a better environment. And honestly, environments like that, cultures like that, that's what helps create champions. So, see you guys next episode 3.